Welcome to the Operator Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Seib, and on this show, we sit down with founders, operators, and key decision makers to break down how real businesses run and optimize behind the scenes. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Alec Armbrecht. Alec, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ethan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Alec works across multiple companies, focused on improving business efficiency with a strong background in hospital administration. He's seen firsthand how a lot of these inefficiencies actually show up in the real world and most importantly, how to fix them. Alec, before I say too much, could you give us a quick snapshot of your work, who you serve, what you provide, and what your role looks like day to day?
Sure. Armbrecht Business Consultants, which is the name of my company, helps businesses improve cash flow and equity position by auditing overhead expenses. Most businesses are overpaying for particular overhead expenses, but they don't necessarily know where they're overpaying or how to negotiate it. And so historically, what someone does to get a lower rate is they shop the business and they may have to change vendors. Well, nobody really wants to change vendors. So what we do is we will audit the statements for each of these expenses to see if savings are available. And if they are, we then negotiate from a position of strength with their current vendor. So they don't have to switch, and we make sure that they get the lowest or best in class pricing.
Awesome. Yeah, that definitely is a good sum up of what we talked about before. Alec, I'll give you a nice, easy one here. What part of your business growth excites you the most right now, especially when it comes to scaling your impact and taking on more of those high valued brokered opportunities?
Right. Well, I'm very excited, about the opportunity for certain types of expenses. One in particular, credit card processing, is one that everyone seems to be overpaying for. And in fact, at least in my part of the country, when I go to a store, a lot of times they now charge me if I want to use a credit card, 3 or 4% or whatever. So there's an opportunity there that frankly, most business owners don't understand it, and that's intentional. Credit card companies go to great lengths to make sure that their customers don't understand the statements. So, a typical credit card processing statement may be 8 to 10 pages, and there may be 2 to 3 different pages of fees. There is a page of important information that's usually on page 2 or 3 that no one ever reads, and that's where they get you. So each of these expense statements really deserves more time and attention than most business owners or CFOs or controllers have time for. So that's probably the one area that we're most excited about right now, is finding savings in credit card processing world.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the credit cards statements. We'll definitely dive into that a bit more here in a minute. On our call, you mentioned that there are a lot of inefficiencies that come from things that just go unnoticed, contracts renewing, fees creeping in, and like you just mentioned, credit card statements. Could you just elaborate a little bit on, where other areas that these can come from, and perhaps share a specific example of how you've seen this impact a business's bottom line?
Sure. So, I like to kind of call it behind the sofa money, which is money that belongs to the business, but they can't put their hands on it right now. And so, that is what we try to uncover. We mine their own expenses to save them money. And, it's an exciting job because we don't charge an upfront fee. We are only paid a percentage of the actual savings that we achieve for our clients. So it's a contingency based model. It's a win-win. There's no risk in doing business with us, because if we don't find savings, then you don't owe us anything. And what the business then has is a free audit that says, hey, your vendors are treating you appropriately, and don't let anybody come and try to change them.
How common is it that across the businesses you work with, and when you're helping these businesses, what's the most operationally complex part of their structure that you typically have to untangle? How do you manage that complexity in your own process?
It's just finding the right person to talk to, that can make decisions. And usually that's a controller or a CFO, or if it's a smaller business, a CEO, may be involved in that, or certainly the business owner if it's a proprietorship, as long as we can get to those people that make the decisions and see where the money is going. So it's usually the person that's responsible for paying those bills. So that's where our conversation starts.
If we looked at 10 businesses right now, how many of them do you think are overpaying somewhere without realizing it? And what are some of the most surprising places you find this behind the sofa money?
Yeah, probably over 80% of businesses are overpaying for at least one overhead expense. It's routine. It's very rare that we don't find savings in whatever the spend category may be. And we look at over 30 spend categories. So, in addition to credit card processing, we look at things like property taxes, sales and use recovery taxes. We find that property taxes or properties are assessed at a higher value than necessary most of the time. We look at IT, telecom, phone, internet, cable TV. If it's a hospital or a medical company, we look at medical supplies, pharmaceuticals. We can audit utilities. We audit waste. We audit human resources. We audit freight and shipping. There's just a lot of different expenses that are out there that there's no one charged with making sure that those are all very efficient. So, a CFO of a hospital may not be an expert in waste management, nor should he or she be. That's where we come in, and we have experts in each of our spend categories that know what the pricing should be, and so that's how we begin our negotiations.
You gave the example of credit card processing statements earlier being 8, 10 pages long and no one reads past the first page. Is that more of a careless issue or just no one having the time or internal resources to properly scrutinize these details?
The latter. And again, the companies don't go out of their way to make their statements easy to read. So if you've got, 10 or 12 statements every month that you need to really evaluate, there's just not the bandwidth typically to do that. And if they do have somebody internally that is responsible for that, typically they're not an expert in that particular field. So an external audit, I think, is always beneficial.
Okay. Thinking about the volume of details you manage in your work, is there any administrative or client facing tasks that still consume a disproportionate amount of your time that you wish you could be more streamlined yourself?
Well, I represent several different companies depending on what the spend is. So I have a team of backups. So my job really is to find where the overpayments are and the things that we need to look at. As far as operational efficiency, I feel like we operate very efficiently. There's very little work that the business has to do to work with us. All we ask for is a copy of prior statements, which most of the time they can run, a 12-month statement in their portal for whatever the expense may be. So it's easy for them to gather the information that we need, and that goes straight to the company. And then that's really when we go to work. And the business from that point on would just see the savings after our negotiations are complete. There's just so little labor involved on the business side. They could not hire somebody to get the same amount of savings that we're able to get, because it's just hard to hire one person that is an expert in each of these different categories. And one of the magic bullet that we have is that we have thousands of clients, and many of which we use the same products or services that this company is using. And so we have benchmark pricing. And so we may say to a vendor, hey, we know you're giving this client X price. We'd like you to give my client X price as well. So we're not asking them to go down to cost. I mean, everybody needs to make a dollar, but we want to be priced fairly. And the good thing about that is once they price an account fairly, there's no reason for that business to leave. So they hang on to that client for a long time. If, for instance, they don't want to negotiate with us, when it's time to renew that contract, typically they're going to lose the business.
If you're able to provide better service than everyone else and do it for a better price, then you're the expert, and that's the best option. I think I touched on this a little bit already, but when you're implementing solutions for clients, what are some of the biggest operational challenges you personally face within their existing structures?
Finding the right person, because sometimes there may be a couple of different people depending on the spend category. For instance, if it's payroll, HR issues, it may be someone in the HR department. If it's treasury or credit cards, it's probably the CFO. If it's IT telecom, then there's maybe a chief information officer. So there may be several different entities, and most of our audits are global in that we want to look at all of the expenses. And so sometimes we have to speak to more than one person, which slows the process down a little bit, but usually it's still not that much information that they have to provide for us.
Okay. And just taking a look at your own business in the same regard, when you look at your own business and how you identify and engage new opportunities, what do you think is the biggest constraint that it could slow you down today? Is it people, process, systems, execution?
Well, AI is really taking over a lot of what I do. I use AI a good bit. Certainly helps with being efficient, but it certainly needs to be checked and monitored before it goes to press. Learning the specifics of AI has been an operational challenge for me. I feel like I'm doing okay with it, but it's still a little bit over my head.
I definitely feel you in that regard. AI is here. It came fast, and it is ever growing. You'll never get to the bottom of it. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, just piggybacking off of what you said, just making sure that you're checking everything and really just not trusting it too much. But AI definitely still needs some improvement in that regard.
Right.
Yeah. You also mentioned hospitals buying thousands of lines of items from suppliers. We won't mention those suppliers. This is something that we discussed in our pre-call. But just not knowing if the pricing is accurate, is that something you see outside of healthcare as well?
Yes, most businesses are overpaying for some of their supplies as well as their other expenses. But my background in hospital administration lends me to focus primarily in that area for supply audits. And like you said, a typical hospital may purchase 8 to 10,000 different products from a single supplier. And so it's not really the supply rep's job to know when prices change. Their job is to improve customer service, whatever, and do what's good for their customer. But out of 8,000 line items, when the price of number 2,411 goes up, nobody really knows that, and that happens sometimes. Say when particular supply goes out of contract, it may renew at a higher rate that we would like to get back in line. So those are the things that we audit every single month.
Okay. And they might be easy to catch if they were going through their entire credit card statements.
Yeah, right. I mean, but the medical supplies for hospitals is probably the main area where we find significant savings. The cost of healthcare is going up everywhere. Margins are being compressed at the hospital level, or really at all levels in healthcare, as well as many other industries. So we want to make sure that they're keeping all of the money that they're entitled to and not, frivolously spending it on expenses that are overpriced.
One thing I found really interesting, Alec, is you only get paid if you actually save the company money. Does that change how businesses respond to working with you?
I think it does. Certainly reduces the risk that anyone has in working with us because you can hire an auditor and pay them a fee. They may not find anything. They may not know how to negotiate with current vendors. So, yes, I think the fact that we're straight contingency based and require such a small amount of labor on the part of the business really, I think, gives businesses a level of comfort in working with us.
Okay. And just following up on that, when you're dealing with such intricate details and high value relationships, how do you ensure that your own pipeline of potential clients is consistently full and efficiently managed without it becoming a bottleneck for your own growth?
Right, and that's always a chore. I have several prospecting methods that I use, whether it be through LinkedIn or referrals. Referrals are my main source of prospects because many of our clients that once they see the savings that we get, they're happy to refer us to other business owners that they know. Following up with them is very important. And that's probably the way that I gather most of my new business. Though I do also have marketing campaigns that I run usually through LinkedIn. So it's one of those things that we can actually demonstrate. We saved this company X amount of dollars, and we feel like we can do the same, for your business,
Yeah, you have the evidence to show it, right?
right?
Alec, could you share a recent story of a client that came to you struggling with something operational and how you helped them overcome it? More just looking like what the situation was, the bottleneck, and the solution you were able to give them.
Right. Well, there's a hospital that I've been working with that knew there was operational inefficiency, or not operational inefficiency, but expense inefficiency. Their expenses were too highly priced, and so they brought us in to look at all of the expenses. And part of the issue is finding the right people to get us the right information that we need. But once we do that and we get it and we complete our audits, we generally find savings, depending on the spend category, in between 11 and 34%. Some expenses typically have higher margins, like payroll and waste. So there's usually a lot of negotiation there. I also do employee benefits. I provide employee benefits as another arm of my business. And we've been seeing a lot of people being interested in PEOs, or professional employer organizations, mostly because what they do is, for a company that may not have a full HR department, can save money on healthcare premiums inside a professional employer organization, and also reduces the risk because the PEO signs the tax form. So if there's an issue with taxes, they come back to the PEO, not the business owner. So that's another avenue that we look at if we're looking at the cost of health insurance. If we can get that reduced, with their current carrier, then that's great. But if we can't, then we do have alternatives.
Yeah, just going back to that number, you said 11 to 34% savings often found. That is very good margins. That's more than I was expecting, in savings in that behind the sofa money that's, no one's been looking for.
Right.
What are you doing to consistently work with more clients like that? And what does the next 12 months look like in terms of expanding your reach and capacity?
Well, working with existing clients for referral based business, I like to send out an introductory email and copy the referrer, on it, and say, so and so has been a valued client of mine and suggested that we might be able to work with you to help you save some money. Can we set up a call? And, I'd say 9 times out of 10, we can at least get a phone call from people. That's just what I do on a day-to-day basis, is calling referrals, hitting the phones, hitting the email, but also managing my clients' existing cases as well.
So you do a lot of the outreach yourself then?
I do almost all of the outreach myself.
Okay, wow. Lots of marketing you said in there. Are you running social media ads or is it mainly LinkedIn where you're doing your services?
LinkedIn primarily. We looked at Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, and they just really weren't the right vehicles for us. And they don't attract the same audience. I do try to guide people to my website, which is armbrechtbc.com, by the way. There is a great description on there about how we work, the services that we offer. There's even a 1-minute video that people can watch that gives the gist of what it is that we do. The goal is always to set up a phone call from someone who visits the website or responds to our LinkedIn, or anything like that. So my call to action is a 20-minute phone call on Zoom where I can show examples of areas that we can save businesses money and what's involved in getting to that point.
Alec, with everything getting more complex, more vendors, more systems, do you think this problem of hidden inefficiencies is getting better or worse?
Worse.
Worse.
There are so many different vendors out there, different spend categories. As businesses grow, it's they just don't have the bandwidth to really tackle, all of it. And I feel like I've given this same answer a couple of times now, but it doesn't change. AI makes some things easier, but people that rely too much on it, end up making mistakes. Um, and we use AI as well, in our business to analyze and audit statements. But as businesses become more complex, vendors are trying to figure out ways to improve their bottom line as well.
Just looking at the landscape of AI tools today, where do you see the biggest untapped potential to further enhance the efficiency and reach of your own business operations?
I do know that, and again, I focus on healthcare, not exclusively, but that's my wheelhouse. And there's a never-ending supply of healthcare entities out there that can use our help. So they're ready-made prospects. It's not like there's 10 hospitals and once you've talked to all 10 of them, that's it. And there's always someone else to speak with. But we also work with warehouses, we work with restaurant chains, we work with convenience stores, we work with delivery services, all different types of businesses that utilize these expenses.
If a business owner wanted to fix these problems today, what's the first thing they should actually look at in their own operations to start uncovering this behind the sofa money?
Well, typically they don't know until we bring it to their attention. I mean, they may know that feel like they're overpaying, but chalk it up as a cost of doing business because we don't have time to negotiate it. If we're overpaying by a percent or two, then that's okay. When really it doesn't have to be okay. So I guess finding the right professional that knows how to go through all of the statements to see where inefficiencies might be, whether, maybe they're not in compliance for, something, or they've got late fees, because they're paying, a month late every time, or, or in the case of like, waste, somebody's in charge of that waste statement, but, they may have a deal where it's not just pricing, but for instance, let's say that the waste company comes by once a week and empties the dumpster, but the dumpster's only a quarter full, but they're paying for 4 visits a month. So we would try to renegotiate that and say, why don't you come once a month instead of 4 times a month? And you take a full bin every time. So that's another way that we can help reduce the cost, is making sure that the services themselves are optimized.
Yeah, Alec, this was truly eye-opening, especially around the things that people don't even realize are costing them money, and how critical operational efficiency is. The potential of AI to reshape business operations and are incredibly valuable. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your expertise on all of this.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, I would just, try to get people to go to our website and take a look. Hopefully some of your listeners will see that maybe that we can help them and will check us out.
We will put your information with the podcast here and make sure that anyone seeing this video is able to get in contact with you and check out what you do.
Great. Ethan, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.